And on that note, we are live. Welcome back to another edition of the Fantasy Authority podcast. I am your host, Kevin Steele. I am joined once again by my fabulous co-hosts at the Merv34 and hashtag Hedge Life, Cody Kutzer.
Yo.
How are you,
What's
gentlemen?
up? Doing well, man. I have a question to throw at you guys real quick. I didn't bring this up pre-show or anything, but I thought of it while I was cooking dinner. If you could eat just one food for every meal the rest of your life, what are you going with? I'll start to give you.
Funny that you asked this. My coworker asked me this earlier today. Go ahead and give your answer, but I can't wait to answer.
That's awesome. The reason why I thought of it is because I had eggs 3 times today for 3 separate meals. And I was thinking as I was cooking dinner, I was like, I could literally eat eggs for every meal. That's what it would be. It would easily be eggs. Like there's nothing else I could even think of.
That's just, I'm going to be honest, that's one of the lamest answers I've ever heard. Cody, what? Eggs?
Kidding me? Super versatile.
You will learn. So, and he also we're getting closer to Thanksgiving, so we had this conversation like a month ago about talking about what was it exactly about the 4th of July or something?
That I prefer the 4th of July as a holiday, as a food holiday over Thanksgiving.
These are just some asinine takes that you're throwing out right now. I didn't know that we were going to go down this road this early. I eat hard-boiled eggs, and I get a lot of shit at work for doing it because I love them.
Well, to your point, that's awful. Why would you take hard-boiled eggs to work? That's like taking fish. You can't do
I don't pay for them. That work provides them. It's a lot easier. But, I mean, I feel like one food for the rest of your life. Okay, now I'm thinking this is a 2-pronged question because my immediate answer is sushi because I love sushi. But you have to think practically. And now I'm understanding your egg answer a little bit more. Wow.
For me, I was going to say something like fucking pizza or something, you know?
See, yeah, we're on the same page, Kevin. And Cody's just coming in.
But, it is what it is. At least I ate something good, like fucking eggs. Well, let me have some. I need my scrambled eggs, you know?
I guess you can make eggs a ton of different ways. So maybe that provides a little bit of variety. You got deviled eggs, hard-boiled eggs, scrambled eggs, sunny side up. Now, can you use the eggs as the main part of a dish? Like, can you do an eggs Benedict, or is that just cheating? You just can only eat eggs.
No, I'm not talking about just eating fucking scrambled eggs with salt and pepper for the rest of my life.
Okay, that makes it a little better. I could do some hollandaise with some English muffins all day.
Well, all right. So we are
famous football. There you go.
Off the rails already. So, anyways, with that. So we got a really fun show planned for tonight. We realized that the clock is into November, which means since we are coming up on week 10, we're only 3 or 4 weeks away from the fantasy playoffs, which the playoffs, it's going to be here very soon. And so I think now is the good time to start prepping for that. Whether you're a 7-2 team, a 4-5 team, a 3-6 team, a lot of there's so many different variables on what you should do and different directions you should go. That's not really binary. I think there's a lot of different ways to discuss it, a lot of different ways to dissect it. And a lot of times when people talk about it, it's simply well, let's look at the fantasy schedule and that's how we're going to decide. And I'm like, that's not really a good answer because you don't really get much from that. There's a lot of different ways to go about that because maybe you don't have a lot of players that do, or if you're a 4-5 team, maybe you're not stacked with studs, or to be able to go out and make those moves to be able to change things up because you're 4-5 or whatever, right? Or if you're a 7-2 team, do you tear apart from what's got you there to that point, or do you recognize that there's leagues that I play in where a team is 7-2 right now, their team sucks and they've scored the third least points in the league, and the only reason they've gotten there is just because they just happen to have that luck streak every week where they're playing the team that has a shitty week that week. It's just the nature of the beast. So anyways, that's kind of what we're going to be discussing tonight. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. If you guys have any questions, as always, since we are doing this live on Periscope and YouTube, drop the questions in the chat and we will get to them as they come. And we also have a bunch of other questions that we want to discuss in our Slack chat that is absolutely free for the community, the TFA community, the TFA fam, as we like to call it. And so you could jump in there. We have DFS. Actually, Ryan this weekend won 7,500 off a tournament. Did well. My co-host of the DFS DJ Nation. So we have DFS, we have redraft, we have the general chat where we just talk about everything. So anyways, so let's start off with a couple of our Slack channel questions that we have, because that's another thing, another good aspect to the Slack channel is being able to ask questions and get answers from us and from the whole community. So let's start off, which is a perfect conversation starter for what we're going to be talking about tonight. Eric C., who's a new sub, actually, he just joined a little bit ago. I'm 3-6 and need to make the playoffs. Is it time to start playing high risk, high reward breakout players?
I don't know about that one. I think that you put yourself in a position where if you own that mentality, it might not be the best like going forward just throughout the playoffs. I think you still have to look at it on a week by week basis. Like we always talk about, if your opponent is throwing out a lineup that, is poised for a 130 projection, let's say in a half PPR 12 team league, pretty high, then it might be time to play some of those high risk, high reward players. But again, if you're going into a matchup where the projections are more in line or even a lower projection than an average, then I don't think it's time to bench those, solid players that have high floors for some of your more breakout flyers. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but I would just say still take it by a week by week basis. It is crunch time for you, but don't abandon your original strategy.
Yeah, no, the only other thing I would add to that is to also look at how Kev was talking about, is your team 3-6, but you're second in points in a league, or you know what I mean, or you lower points? Do you have the most points against? That's something else I would take into consideration whenever you're looking at possibly playing some guys that are more boom bust. But the key point is just looking at who you playing this week. Do they have a lineup that's clearly overshadowing yours, or do they end up having somebody that went off on Thursday night football? Then that's when I would look at throwing in those more boom bust, high risk, high reward players. Anything to add to that, Kev?
No, yeah. Sorry. Doing my jobs, trying to send out some tweets, using leveraging my massive following that I have to get people in here to, listen.
Absolutely massive.
So, we could just take everybody's in here and just combine them, and they're not to my level. But anyways, so I 100% agree with what he said, what old Hedge Life is saying over there. Because if you're a 3-6 team and your team is not good, which and you haven't performed very well, then I think it's time to start kind of, for lack of a better term, start playing it like it's a GPP and DFS. And I think those teams are a lot more dangerous, and I think this is why. We talk about this a lot, like around, just with some friends and stuff in like my home league. And it always seems like every single year, the team that wins the whole damn thing is the team that snuck in, that ends up with like 5 or 6 wins. And it's like, this team is horrible. And you're like, how does this team make it to the damn, even make it into the playoffs? But then they won the whole thing. Like my team every single year, and I'm not like humble brag over here, but like is the best team in the league. And I've never won it. Never won the league. Right. And like this year, like my team is absolutely loaded, right? And I guarantee you it's going to be a team but the reason why is because when you're so loaded, you are forced to play that lineup. You are not sitting all these players because you're a stacked team, right? So you're just playing this loaded lineup, no matter the matchups, no matter what. Where a team that isn't there, that's not loaded, is able to run the waiver wire, just play strict matchups, and who gives a shit about who you're playing. You're just trying to basically play for ceiling. And actually, the guy who won it in our league last year, he had asked me before that week started what he should do. And I remember last year, like, dude, just play the fucking. I told him just go play all the Jets. I don't remember their matchup last year, but the Jets had a fantastic Week 16 matchup last year. I was like, pick up all the Jets that are all available, pick them up and play them all, and they smashed, right? Now, that's not an option for everybody, but my point is that you're very dangerous at that point because you can just throw everything out the window. Fuck rankings. Who cares about that? You're not just simply playing players just because of their name. You're looking at it. You're playing matchups where a lot of people aren't going to do that. Most people are. If you have Saquon Barkley, you're playing him. I don't know if that's probably not the best example because the reason you play him is because of the floor that he provides and everything else. But maybe like Aaron Jones, for example, who can be very hit or miss. Like this past week where he fucking scored 3 points or whatever, 3.9 fantasy points. But then other weeks he may give you 40. So if that player is in a terrible matchup, let's say he was playing like the Bucks, who have an elite run defense, where you may think, well, maybe I should sit him this week because you have to win every week here on out. There is no more losing for you. If you lose one more week, it's over. And so you're able to do those things where a lot of other people aren't able to do that because you're kind of locked into that lineup. You're locked into that team because of most of your team is filled with high floor players, but their floor could easily kill you and lose you a week. Where that high ceiling team, that's what you're looking for. If you lose, you lose. You're already a bad team. You have nothing else to lose at this point. And so that's where I think things get a little more interesting for players like that. So yes, I would be swinging for the fences. And that's all I'd be looking at is straight upside.
Now, if you're a 3-6 kind of team like that, and let's say like you don't have a great team, maybe you have like 1 or 2 studs that are performing well, would you look at trading one of your studs to try and fill your line out a little bit more, or are you gonna kind of go how you were talking about, Kev, like GPP, like stars and scrubs kind of approach?
So it depends, right? Because we're only about, I think, a week or two away from, I think most people's trade deadline is either next week or the week after. It just kind of depends on how you set it up. And so, like, let's say you're a team and the rest of your team is hot garbage, but you got Saquon Barkley, who's been a god this year, right? But that god's not going to get you anywhere because you're 3-6. Now, what you can do is, and I do think that's a viable strategy, is because you could get the house for Christian McCaffrey, right? And I would look to trade him if you're in that position. I mean, I don't know what else you have left to do. And, maybe you get out of that. Maybe you get Allen Robinson or Chris Godwin, who's hasn't been as prolific the last couple of weeks. You get somebody like Chris Godwin. You get David Montgomery and, I don't know, Marlon Mack or something like that, right? Where you're bringing in more talent, but you're shipping out like your most reliable asset who every single week. But on the flip side of that, I think that the other discussion is the teams that are like 7-2 and you're on top of the world right now and you don't want to mess with your team. I think for your strategy as you're heading into the playoffs needs to be somewhat of the opposite, where you're making smaller level moves. You don't need to go make that big move. I think that's when you want to go and you try to acquire, your handcuffs. For example, if you're a Dalvin Cook owner, do it. You may overpay a little bit to get Alexander Madison, but he's going to save your ass if something happens to him, right? And I think that's something. And I know it may seem basic, and that's not like groundbreaking, but a lot of people don't take that approach. They just kind of let their team ride.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think on that second point specifically, you look at the Vikings and their playoff schedule when it comes to points against for running backs at top 5. And if anything were to happen to Dalvin Cook, you can insert Madison right into that RB1 discussion, possibly even a top 5 running back. So if you're a team sitting at 7-2, like it may make sense to overpay quite a bit, actually, I would say, for an Alexander Madison. And there are going to be teams out there like this guy who's 3-6, to your point, who are going to want to start shipping off assets. Like, if they have a surefire RB1, but the rest of their team is trash, to try to make a run. I really like that point, Kev. I didn't really think too much into that, but there's a couple teams in leagues that I'm playing in where it's like Christian McCaffrey, scrub. And I mean, selfishly, for me, it's like maybe I should try to target Christian McCaffrey. If I know I'm going to make it into the playoffs, it's another strategy there, and start shipping off some of these guys that, you really haven't played if you're 7-2 on your bench, to try to give this guy more upside because he's looking to sell. So another strategy, if you're pretty surefire going to make it into the playoffs anyway, maybe you should grab one of those big names while you can, or to your point, like a Godwin, somebody who has underperformed in recent weeks that the owner might be getting a little bit stressed out right now just because the playoffs are inching closer and closer.
All great points, except it should be Amir Abdullah instead of Alexander Madison, but.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Oh, man. The return, man. The return. He's back from the dead. I remember when the Lions drafted his ass, and everyone was so excited.
like every week with teams where you see this and you see like offensive coordinators and like or their game plan. I'm like, what were you thinking this week? Like the Chiefs last week against the Vikings. You're playing the team with the worst run defense in the league. And like their first 3 plays were all passing plays. And I'm like, what are you doing, dude? And then they're putting in Amir Abdullah in passing situations who hadn't played all year. And it's like they're trying to get too cute. And I don't know if some of it is like the Andy Reid factor where they know that the type of game plans that he's going to come up with. And I don't know what teams that come out and they do these sorts of things. Like it made no sense whatsoever that all of a sudden Amir Abdullah, it's week 9. We're playing a backup quarterback. Let's get cute now.
I think we overestimate how much coaches actually pay attention to to matchups and things like that. I saw a quote today from Freddie Kitchens saying that he doesn't look at stats. Somebody was asking him about Baker Mayfield's completion percentage, and I think it was like on 3rd down. And he's like, I don't really look at that. I don't really pay attention to stats. It's like, what? You don't pay attention to stats? Like, what do you look at? You're just looking at film the whole time and judging by your eye? Like, it just bewilders me, some of these guys, and the fact that they have jobs in the league. It's ridiculous.
I think specifically to the Chiefs-Vikings thing, that was Mike Zimmer trying to sabotage the passing game so he can be like, see, we need to run the damn ball. We've been passing this too much. What are we doing? Let's get Kirk Cousins back down to 10 pass attempts next week.
Yeah, no double digits. Let's say drop that further.
Yeah, you could tell that Zimmer was pissed on the sidelines. Like he was not having none of this. Like, what are you doing? And it's not like that. I mean, Dalvin Cook still had like 28 touches last week or whatever, but I don't know. Things like that. I guess things like this happen, and we see it every week with game plans and stuff like that. And that's why we tilt our face off, because you put on all this work to do we do all this work to put in research, and then all of a sudden Sunday comes and the coaches just give you a big old fuck you with that and it's decisions that they make. So I know a lot of people lost a lot of money off Dalvin Cook last week. So Anyways. So yeah, why don't we jump into another question? Rav Johal, are you selling or holding New England's defense?
I mean,
I am good.
I was just gonna say, I'll make this quick. Like, I've never tried to trade for a defense, and I really don't think I've ever seen too many trades of someone acquiring a defense. So I wouldn't even have any idea of like where to start this in terms of what to ask for in return. You know what I mean? Like there's whatever the price is going to be, it's going to be too high for me. So like, I don't even know if you have them, you're holding them. I mean, I guess if you can get someone to completely overpay, I would trade him away. But like, I don't even have the slightest clue of what the starting point would even be. Have you guys ever seen trades for a defense in a redraft league?
For this caliber, I mean, averaging over 18 points a game, I think yes. I would still hold the defense, though. I think they have a pretty favorable schedule. And to your point, I don't think I would ever see it an enticing enough offer at this point, just because you're getting such an edge every week. And their schedule does get a little bit tricky coming up here. But I mean, if there's a guy in your league that's just a diehard Pats fan, or has just been so enamored with how they've been performing over the first half of the season, then yeah, like all offers are on the table, because you got defenses out there. I'm not necessarily sure they're on the wire anymore right now, but like a Philly, like a Baltimore. I mean, maybe you try to target the guy that has a defense like that, like a Philly or Baltimore, and you say, hey, I'll give you the New England defense, but you got to give me Baltimore, you got to give me Philly, and then a player. And maybe that's your package deal at that point. Because I don't think New England can sustain the type of performance that they've had over the first half of this season. So, tricky question.
Yeah, because right now, if you look at New England's defense, they're the third among non-quarterbacks. They would be smack dab at third right now in total fantasy points scored, with including running backs and wide receivers.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, they have 169 fantasy points. But here's the thing: they're going to fucking regress. Okay, their defense is not nearly as good as what we think it is, and I know it's a hot thing to say, and it's the trendy thing to say right now because of what we just saw against Lamar. And I think somebody had him at Lamar last week as a sick candidate. I don't remember who that was. I'm trying to remember, but I don't remember. I don't know.
I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? That same person probably also said Gardner Minshew was going to be a top 5 QB, and now he's benched. It's fun. Everything's fun.
But yeah, so Listen, I mean, the Patriots schedule gets a hell of a lot harder down now, starting with what we had last week. And, they're on bye this week and they come off that. I know they still have games against the Texans, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Chiefs. Like, they ain't going to be that every week anymore. Okay. That's done. And the problem is, though, is I don't know. It's going to be tough to trade them, especially now they're on bye. And so trying to find somebody that would be willing to do that now and probably being able to look at their schedule is probably not going to feel as good about them as other people's will. So I think that's the problem right now with them. And if you can sell them, sure, but you're probably not going to be able to sell them for much of what you would think you'd be able to, and you'd probably have to package it with something to be able to make it happen. So you're right. I mean, you don't see usually in leagues, you don't see a whole lot of people trading for defenses just because every week you can just kind of stream and it's a onesie position. And let's be honest, we should just drop defenses anyways and just run a flex, right? So.
Team no defense, no kicker, baby. Preach.
Yeah. It took us forever for me to get rid of kickers in our league. Anyways, here's another one from Rachel. Is it time to trade away or trade for Juju? So Steelers get Rams, Bengals, Browns twice, Cardinals, Bills, Jets, all above 10th besides the Jets, and points allowed to wide receivers. Wide receiver 18 over the last 2 weeks and 14 and only 14 targets. How do you guys feel?
I'm not trading for him. I mean, I don't necessarily think he's not anywhere near where you drafted him, right? So if you're the owner and you've held on to him this long, I don't think you're getting that much in return if you're looking to trade him. If you're on the flip side, I'm not going out and trading for him right now. I think he just is what he is. He's getting thrown to by a backup quarterback on a team that's pretty reliant on their defense and their willingness to run the ball. And I don't even know. Obviously, last year they had Antonio Brown. He took away a lot of that coverage. He made life easy for Juju. We all thought going into this year that Juju was going to break out. He was going to be that true wide receiver one. He was going to shine in the Pittsburgh offense. He's just not looking that way. And a lot has to do with the quarterback, but I think this is just a lost year for him. And I'm not actively going out there and trading for him. I know he had a big performance a couple weeks ago, but no, I might even be trying to sell him off the name brand if I'm an owner right now. What do you guys think?
I'm going to go into the hedge life here because it's not really something I can get away from. But
you're in the middle.
I mean, I would trade him if I could, but if I couldn't, no, it would all depend on. It's all dependent on the price. You're not going to overpay for him because he had 3 catches for 16 yards last week. They have the Rams this week. It's looking like it's going to be another down week for him. So if I'm going to trade for him, obviously this all depends on when your trade deadline is. But if you do want to go get him, because it's not like they have that crazy of a schedule after this Rams game, I would wait until after this game if you could. He should still be cheap, but if someone's holding on to him because hey man, that was my first round pick, I can't just give him up for cheap, then I'm not going to overpay for him because he's like Murph said, he's still getting thrown to by Mason Rudolph, who does not look like he's going to be the future quarterback for the Steelers. So it for trades, it always comes down to the price. But if your trade deadline is still open after the Sunday games, that's when I would go and trade for Juju, assuming that he's not going to have a big game this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be seeing probably all the Jalen Ramsey he can handle this week. He's just going to be on that Jalen Ramsey island, and I think he's going to get shadowed. So I wouldn't feel real great about it. I guess. If you could go out and and trade something for him, but again, like you guys have said, I don't think you're going to get a ton for him. I don't think you're going to get fair value for him. And what is his value right now? Actually, though, he's a name right now. We can sit here and talk about how talented he is. I think we all agree on that. But the situation is horrible. They want to run the football, and Mason Rudolph is not good. I think we can agree on that. He didn't look good against the Dolphins. And here we are, he's going to go against the Rams. Now he'll probably go out to over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns this week. But I'm just saying, I don't think you can. I think you're stuck with him if you got him, and if you play him in good matchups as a flex, and that's about it. Because I think that's all he is right now, is a wide receiver 4 or 5. I think that's really where he sits right now.
Yep.
So we got a question from old Rock Out. So we're going to rock out with Damian Williams or Tyrell Williams or Zach Pascal, who came off a big week this past week. Can trade Colts D for Zach Pascal. I also have the Rams D to take the Colts spot. Flex full PPR.
I would absolutely trade the Colts D if I can get Pascal in return for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Anytime you can trade a defense for a skill player, especially one that's emerging right now, I think that's a no-brainer. I think the Colts D is solid, but I mean, they're not. We just discussed the Patriots D, the best in the league, and like the fact that even trading them is kind of, or like the trade value there is still up in the air. So that's a no-brainer offer for me.
Kev, do you have any, as far as Damian Williams goes, do you think this is starting to level out? Do we think we see Damian Williams kind of take over, or is this just going to be one of those up and down, we never know each week?
I think I think he's for real. I think this is for real with him. I think a couple of things. I think Andy Reid is sick and tired of LaShawn McCoy fumbling the football. He's cost the Chiefs realistically 2 games now. I mean, he cost them the Packers game. The Chiefs were tied, had the ball, and fumbled, and that's whenever, basically the Chiefs lost. So, no, I do think this is for real. We saw last week LaShawn McCoy was actually outsnapped and outtouched by Darrell Williams. And I think they like Darrell Williams. I think they like his versatility as, that's what they want. Like, all their backs can basically do that. But I do think Damian Williams, now granted, the thing is with Damian Williams, if you take away that 91-yard touchdown, his numbers weren't fantastic. But we know what he can do. We know in this offense, we saw it last year. He is a 100% buy if you can do it. The problem is he just came off a monster week. Now, the thing that I would say is that this is not a great matchup this week for him going against Tennessee. Tennessee is solid against the run. Pat Mahomes should be back. I think they'll use them. So I do think that Damian Williams, at least you can try to buy him. And I think he's worth it because we know he has top 5 upside.
Pulled up a stat here. Our friend Scott Barrett. Damian Williams, 5th in the league in missed tackles force per touch. LaShawn McCoy, 63rd. Darrell Williams, 62nd. So the talent's there. I think Andy Reid, like to your point, is starting to realize that the best back in Kansas City is Damian Williams. But again, also agree with you. It's going to be hard to try to buy him off of a week like that. So maybe wait until he, again, depending on your trade deadline. But is this we don't know if it's a start-sit question for this week or for trade value. I'm not sure.
That's what it sounds like. So that's what was going to be my next question. So then who would you start among Damian Williams, Tyrell Williams, or Zach Pascal? But who would you start?
I think I would start Pascal in that situation just based on the matchup against Miami. He's kind of the de facto number 1 wide receiver right now. Obviously, the only thing that they had threatening on that defense was Xavier Howard, and he went on IR, last week or the week before. Kev, you already touched on it's a difficult matchup for Damian. And then as much as I wish I could say Tyrell Williams, but they just seem to be spreading that ball around so much. Jacobs is going to get a bunch of touches. Waller's going to get his. Foster Moreau is now in the mix. So I think I might go Pascal on that one.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you. The Chargers have a pretty stingy pass defense, 25th in points allowed to opposing wide receivers. So I think I would go Pascal as well. I mean, it depends. And this is, again, maybe bringing it back a little bit to that playoff question. Yes, Tennessee has a pretty stingy run defense, but if the trend continues in Andy Reid giving Damian Williams more touches, do we assume a higher floor for Damian Williams with a higher ceiling for Pascal? And maybe depending on your situation, which one do you roll with?
See, for me, I think for me, if I was deciding this week in this matchup, I think it would have to be. I would think I would lean Damian Williams. We know he's explosive offense. He can get down to the 1-yard line and punch it in and get a couple goal line touchdowns. We know they're going to utilize him as a pass catcher. They love setting him out there on wheel routes and things like that and catching the defense off guard. And he's perfectly capable of busting off a 60-yard touchdown. So I think in terms of just, ceiling and everything else, I think I would rather play Damian Williams. He does carry risk, but I think all of these guys carry risk. None of them are like just absolute smash plays, because I can see Miami getting in a game script where they just can pound the rock with Marlon Mack, and they don't really have to throw the ball that much. And we still have to check to see what's going to happen with Jacoby Brissett if he plays. I know it sounds like he may play this week now, but if he doesn't, it doesn't seem like a week. I don't know why you would if you're the Colts. You don't really need to. I think you can win with Brian Hoyer. But if you look at, so I know it's very, very small sample size, but Pascal had like a 40% target share with Brissett, and then he only had like a 14 target share with Brian Hoyer. Again, very small target share, but I think it's at least something to look at. So, I don't know. Like, I think I would roll with what I think is the safest option, and I think the highest ceiling option, and that for me is Damian Williams.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to our first question about, 3-6 team. Do you start playing the high risk, high reward? I mean, kind of look at who you're playing this week. I do agree on the Damian Williams being the safest, though, for sure.
No, yeah. All right. So let's go back to another question from General Zod, Trey Rice. I have Lamar Jackson. Should I keep Kirk Cousins on my bench or drop him so I can stream RB2, wide receiver 2, flex positions?
Interesting question. Given my hatred of Lamar, no, kidding. Definitely the wrong call last week benching him. He is absolutely electric. I think you roll with him rest of season. The only thing I'll say is that in weeks 13 and 14, he has San Francisco and Buffalo back-to-back. That's 32nd in terms of points allowed to quarterbacks and 29th in terms of their rankings. Kirk in those same weeks has Seattle and Detroit ranked 11th and 7th. Now, we know how bad the Vikings are on the road, not in the dome, versus teams with winning records. I think there's something crazy like a 2-18. That fact-check me on that one. So maybe not against Seattle since that's an away game, but Detroit's at home. So when Lamar's going against Buffalo, maybe you plug in Kirk against Detroit. Again, I personally got burned last week by not playing Lamar in what was supposed to be a bad matchup. So at this point, do we think he's matchup proof? Maybe. But the question is, do you want Kirk on your bench for maybe starting him 1 week over the next 6, 7? I don't know. Depends on who's on the wire.
No, I don't think you should. I think you should drop him, in my opinion. If you can only start one quarterback, there's no point at all of rostering two. You have Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has been a stud all year. I think he could legitimately rush for 1,200 yards this year. He's averaging over his last 4 weeks 14 carries a game. So, I mean, that is elite. I mean, absolutely elite. And that's why his floor is so high, is because he's always going to be able to bail you out if he has a bad passing week. Like, he's not someone that's going to go out and give you 40 attempts. Like, it's just not happening. They just run the ball too much. But with Lamar, he's always capable of breaking off long touchdowns. And so for him, his rushing floor is so much higher than everybody else's. And so again, I mean, this week they have the nut matchup. What are they playing? The Bengals. The Bengals have allowed they've allowed double rushing yards to the next closest team. So that's how many rushing yards they've allowed to running quarterbacks. They allowed almost 100 to Kyler Murray when they played him. They allowed a ton to Lamar Jackson the last time they played him. So, yeah, there's no reason to have Kirk Cousins anymore. Again, maybe you try to find somebody that's really hurting at quarterback and they're not doing well, and maybe you try to unload Kirk Cousins on them. I think that is probably the best way to go, because I don't think that you can play him. I wouldn't want to keep them both. I would want to free up my roster spots for those valuable, like we've talked about, cuffs that are out there: Tony Pollard, Rashad Penny, Alexander Madison, like all those guys. I would rather have than Kirk Cousins as my second quarterback that I'm never going to play.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have anything to add to that. I think you two gentlemen did quite the job in answering that question.
Kirk had a good run. He had a good run. Time to say bye.
And he still could, but he just doesn't have this. I mean, he doesn't have the floor really at all of what Lamar does, and he definitely doesn't. I don't even know if he has a ceiling on most weeks, because they know that we know that that's all they ever want to do is run the football. So, and he doesn't give you that rushing upside, which is, it just comes to show you, like, if you look at a player like Kyler Murray, for example, I think is a QB1 right now, and that's mainly all because of his legs. Like he has not been good on the ground, like through the air at all. I mean, basically Larry Fitzgerald is dead. He's not doing nothing. Christian Kirk's doing nothing. Like it's all because of his ability to use his legs and get out of the pocket and pick up yards that way. And that's the only reason he is where he is. It's because of that. And so I think that is we tend to not value some of the running quarterbacks as well as we should have. Like all year we pounded the table for Kyler Murray, and I think it just goes to show this because of the ability to pick up rushing yards. It's like a Mitchell Trubisky last year. Mitchell Trubisky was averaging 30, 40 rushing yards a game, and that's where we saw those big weeks from him where he would have those 30, 35-point weeks. We're not seeing that anymore out of him. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky looks fucking lost. Like he has no business even being on a football field right now, let alone doing anything else. And it's crazy, that they probably should be looking at, like maybe Chase Daniel at this point, because Mitchell, like last week was the perfect week for him to get back on track. They were playing the Eagles, who have allowed everybody to throw all over them, and no. Allen Robinson had one catch for 6 yards or something like that.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's a bad result for my boy Allen. I don't know why they stick. I mean, maybe they stick with Mitch throughout the rest of this year, but does a guy like Cam Newton go to the Bears next year? That's something that's floating around a little bit.
We talked about this last week with the boy poured out one, Andy Dalton, who definitely should be a starting quarterback next year too. But a team that is so close with so much damn talent. The Bears have so much talent offensively. Allen Robinson, David Montgomery, Taylor Gabriel, Anthony Miller, Trey Burton. Like they have a ton of offensive weapons. They should not be this bad. And their defense is solid. Their defense isn't as good as it was last year, but that's okay. Their defense is definitely better than at least half the teams in the league. And this team shouldn't be this bad. So, I don't know.
What they need to do is get Swag Kelly. Need to pull him off of whatever practice squad that he's on or out of free agency and just let him run wild the last couple weeks.
Dude, last week when Brissett went down, I was like, oh, my God, we're about to get Swag Kelly. And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh, no, never mind. They picked up Brian Hoyer. Damn it. We're not going to get Swag Kelly. I thought we were going to get it. I honestly
die on the Minshew Hill. You die on the Kelly Hill. How about that?
Either he's the Kristen Michael of quarterbacks where we all just overhype him and just like think that he's just the greatest thing ever because he's never played, and we can all just have our fantasy that he would actually be an elite quarterback or a talented quarterback. But I do think so. Dude, every time I've seen that man play in the preseason, he's bald. Like, just bald. Now, if he can stop getting hammered and going to people's houses like when he's not supposed to and sitting down on the couch and trying to have conversations with them, he might be okay. But I do think Swag Kelly could be something.
Didn't he also get in a brawl at a high school game or something too? Like while he was still in college. Pretty sure he went to like one of his high school games and got in a fight on the field or something.
He's a county. He just can't give it back. He throws on the old Letterman jacket and goes back home. What's up, boys? I'm back. Nut tap somebody. Shotgun the beer.
Let's give this kid a swirly.
All right. We're going off the rails again. All right. Another question from Rockout. Would you drop Josh Allen and Goff for Jimmy G and Nick Foles based on company schedule? Because Allen got only 2 more good plays and Goff got bad plays.
Allen and Goff have pretty atrocious playoff schedules. But I guess it just depends on if you're dead set on, or not if you're dead set, if you're going to be in the playoffs for sure, then maybe you roll the dice and nab Nick Foles before somebody else does in your league. I mean, again, I think it just depends on where you're at record-wise right now. But I love Foles' schedule for the playoffs. He's one of my favorite pickups right now. And for Allen and Goff, I mean, we just talked about the floor that a rushing quarterback has that's really buoyed Allen's performance. So, I mean, if you want to keep riding that until the playoffs, I don't know if you're asked, like, how many roster spots are you willing to use on quarterbacks at this point? But I think Nick Foles is a definite add if you're going to be in the playoffs and start streaming quarterbacks, and maybe you look to drop in Allen or Goff just because you're not going to start them weeks 14 through 16.
Yeah, this is something that we were going to touch on during the, as Kev likes to say, the meat and potatoes of the pod. But for the playoffs, the Jags have the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Falcons. We kind of touched on the 2 quarterback thing earlier already, so I would just pick one of those guys and just ride with one of them, or just keep, just stream it week to week. Like Murph was saying, it's also going to depend on your record and how sure you are that you're getting into the playoffs. But I would just either pick one of those guys and just ride with them, or just stream that position week to week and save those valuable bench spots for something that isn't a onesie position.
Yeah, I would want to keep Josh Allen. I mean, Josh Allen's 4th in rushing yards among quarterbacks. He's 2nd in touchdowns with 4 rushing touchdowns on the year, which has really helped out his numbers. I mean, he's been okay as a passer. Again, I mean, he's even worse than really what Kyler Murray has been. He only has, 1,600 yards passing, and he does have 10 passing touchdowns, which is more than Kyler. But that rushing floor that he provides, I think, far outweighs guys like, Jared Goff, who is really matchup dependent, and Jimmy Garoppolo. Again, they're another team that wants to really run the football. So, certain matchups, sure, I think Jimmy G would win over him, but I would rather play Josh Allen on a weekly basis and feel much better about it. I think we have one more question that we want to hit up, and that is from I Love Cheeseburgers. Great name. Always a great name every time. Yep. Is Todd Gurley benchable? Can you bench Todd Gurley?
You can bench anybody.
Because it kind of depends. But in the state of where we are, let's say he's like, let's say you have some other dependable running backs like a Mark Ingram on your bench, and a couple other players that maybe because without much context behind that. In what situation would you consider benching him? Because right now, I mean, he's kind of borderline, basically like an RB2.
I think we're going to learn a lot about the Rams' plans and how they're going to use him coming out of this bye. That offense has been struggling. So, I mean, I think if we start to see – I don't think we're going to get the 30 – the 25 to 30 touch Todd Gurley of yesteryear. But if we start to see his snaps and his touches increasing, I would not bench him, just because at any point he can punch in 2 touchdowns, even if he's only getting 12 carries. If they can get him down to the red zone. So this week against the Steelers do have a really solid run defense. So if you have those options available, like Mark Ingram, Marlon Mack kind of thing, if you can throw a higher floor, higher ceiling wide receiver in your flex spot, I mean, I think this could be a week where you bench him just to kind of get an idea of how they're going to use him going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think the touchdown upside is similar to what we see with Sony Michel in New England. The guy can get 15 touches and only be on the field for 40 to 50% of the time, but he can punch it in twice. They use him in the red zone. But if you do have Gurley, just a reminder if for some reason Darrell Henderson is still on your wire and you're making a playoff push, that's a hot name to pick up, even if you don't have Gurley right now, because anything happens, that knee starts acting up. I think, he's already getting 40% of the snaps over the last 2 weeks, Henderson, that is. So a name to add and be wary of come playoff time. But I think I agree with Cody's points on that touchdown upside. But yeah, just not the same player that we saw last year.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, again, it probably would just depend. Like, he's definitely not somebody that I would feel comfortable. Like, he's right now is more of a name than that's what he carries more than anything. I do think that he, again, it's all about matchup for me. It is going to be interesting to see how they use him coming off this bye. We do know that Brandon Cooks sounds like he's going to be out for a while, so that's one less pass catcher they have. The problem too with Gurley is they haven't been using him nearly as much as a pass catcher, which seemed like would be a much more optimal approach to use him, and then use one of the running backs between the tackles, to not get banged up as much and everything else, keep some of that wear off of him. But it's like they've taken the opposite approach and rather just use him as a running back or as a just between the tackles grinder than what he does the best at, and that is giving those high leverage value targets to him and seeing what he can do with them in open space. So they just haven't done that with him, nearly as much as they did before. So it's really killed his fantasy value so far. So I don't think you can trust him right now unless something changes. All right, so we have one more from Reed Anderson, which I think is a good question because I think a lot of people are going to be struggling with that, especially this week. What is your stance on David Johnson versus Kenyon Drake this week? I'll just go ahead and start off by me and I'll tell you this, that when you look on paper and you just see Tampa Bay as who they're playing, and you're like, damn, okay, they get to play the Bucs this week. That's what I'm talking about, boys. Wheels up, but it's not. The Bucs have been elite against the run all year. They completely shut down Christian McCaffrey this year.
Twice.
So yeah, twice. They even this past week when they played the Seahawks, Chris Carson, I think he had one big gain. I think it was like a 50-yard run, but other than that, he did absolutely nothing in that game. I would want no part of David Johnson or Kenyon Drake this week if you don't have to. I think David Johnson would be the one that I'd want to go with because I do think that he said he's 100% healthy. If he's 100% healthy, look, they're paying this dude like $15-16 million a year. Like they're using David Johnson if he's healthy. And the thing with him that I think at least that you can somewhat hang your hat on is they are willing to put him in the slot and utilize him more as a pass catcher. And so if I had to make a decision, it's David Johnson. That's the way that I would go. It would not be Kenyon Drake. I know a lot of people are going to look at and say, well, yeah, but Kenyon Drake just played the 49ers who've been good against the run. But if you dig a little bit deeper, which, we talked about this a little bit on the DFS DJ Nation pod, whenever about him or about the 49ers haven't necessarily been great against the run. If you look at more on some of the stuff that they've done, I think they'd given up like at least 4 or 5 weeks of over 100 yards rushing. They just hadn't given up many touchdowns, and that had kind of buoyed their number a little bit and made them look a little less susceptible against the run than what we saw. So wasn't as surprised when Kenyon Drake did what he did. But this week is a stone cold terrible matchup going against the Bucs, and if I had to play one, it's DJ, and that's it.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially because one of the things to look at now, obviously, with Drake coming in on like a Tuesday and they played on Thursday, that's going to have something to do with this. But they really didn't use Drake outside of the backfield too much. He only played 2 snaps. He played 1 in the slot and 1 lined up out wide, and obviously that's something that DJ had been doing more under Cliff. So if I am going to play one, it's going to be DJ because I can utilize him a little bit more, just especially knowing the offense better, obviously, utilize him more in the slot and out wide. And obviously that's where Tampa is a lot more vulnerable versus just the run.
So a quote from Kingsbury from practice today, when it came to talking about Drake and Johnson, we got to find a way to utilize both of them. I think we'll be smart with how we use Johnson and make sure we don't give him the ball 40 times, anything like that. Just get his game conditioning back. So even though he could be 100% healthy, this is still going to be a timeshare in any regard. I mean, to your point, Kev, they're not going to just throw DJ by the wayside. They're paying him way too much money, but they don't want to rush his return, especially because they're not competitive for a playoff spot right now. There's no point in doing that. You got to protect your investment. And on top of that, this matchup is terrible on paper. So I think you're avoiding both of them this week. I know there's probably going to be some news coming out Sunday morning saying DJ's full go, going to handle the bulk of the carries. We saw the Cardinals burn the fantasy community once before this year, saying that DJ was ready to go. And then we saw Chase Edmonds take control of the backfield. So I don't want a part of either of them this week. Agree with both of you.
Yeah, it's just a tough spot. So, okay, I think that's all the questions we have for now. So let's go ahead and jump into the old news and notes. There's not a ton for this week. Cam Newton was sent to the IR. I think he's going to see a foot specialist. Or no, he went and saw a foot specialist, I believe, to try to figure out why it's not getting any better. But just I don't know. I honestly think this is probably Cam Newton's last year in Carolina. Not that I think Kyle Allen's actually the answer. But I don't know. It just seems like the writing's on the wall for Cam Newton and being gone from there. So we'll see what happens. But for now, stick with Kyle Allen. Nick Foles named Week 11 starter. The Minshew Mania is over. It was a fun ride. We can pour one out for the homie. But he just really started to struggle in recent weeks. And, they got to see what they paid Nick Foles a lot of money. They were not going to, unless they were in like a playoff run, there was no way Nick Foles. And to be honest, like this is what Nick Foles does, right? He misses or he doesn't play half the year. Then he comes in at this time and then Big Dick Nick shows up and really takes over the scene and just crushes, right? Isn't that what he does?
I mean, it's the end of the mustache ride, and it's time for Big Dick Nick. So it's the perfect setup for the Jaguars.
What a revolving door in Jacksonville. First, they just clown the shit out of Sam Darnold, throwing out Big Dick Nick. It's a frenzy over there, man. And this playoff schedule, man, he's coming back. I'm pumped.
Yeah, and you never know. If they go on some crazy run, and get into the playoffs. Like Nick Foles is not the man I'd want to see in the playoffs. Like the dude has ice water running through his veins. But, anyways. Do you guys think this has any impact fantasy-wise? Like, we don't really have any data to go off if you played like the first half against the Chiefs week 1, and that's all we've seen on them. So it's not like we have a whole lot to go off of how things are going to change. But I do remember, again, we're talking about one half, but I know he really targeted DJ Shark early and often in that game as well. So I don't know if that's going to be a big concern. But do you guys like anybody more, hate anybody more, or basically just a wait and see?
I don't think you can like Chark any more than you already do at this point. I have him as a top 10 play the rest of the year. And obviously that playoff schedule, fantasy-wise, is super favorable. I think, if anything, it's an improvement. To your point, he peppered Chark in the first half of that game versus the Chiefs. So I think that rapport is already there. And I think that they'll open up the playbook. It's such a cliche to say. I hate saying that, open up the playbook a little more. But I think Foles has a stronger arm, has more experience than Minshew, so they probably dialed it back for Minshew to make it a little bit easier. And if anything, they're going to be seeing more deep targets on that Jags wide receiving core. So even a name like a D comes up, something like that. But if you have Chark, you're playing him, then I just think the ceiling goes up.
Yeah, it was concentrated to begin with. We know it's going to be Conley, Chark, and Westbrook with Fournette sprinkled in. So I really don't think it changes too much, to be honest.
It will be interesting to see what happens this offseason with them, and if they try to kind of do a Jimmy G type of deal where they move Gardner Minshew and keep Nick Foles. They paid Nick Foles quite a bit, a decent chunk of change, but I do think probably the head coach is gone. We're going to see a lot of turnover this year. I think Dan Quinn in Atlanta is also days are numbered, and Freddie Kitchens, that dude. They at least need to fire Todd Monken or something. That offensive strategy they have going on there in Cleveland is atrocious, but. Anyways, another conversation for another day. After that, Sterling Shepard, a candidate for IR, is dealing with a concussion. He's had, I think, 2 this year. I think it'd be smart for them to shut them down. They're not going anywhere. So I guess that's good news for Golden Tate and Darius Slate owners. Not that you'd have to be matchup proof, but this would be a great week probably to start Darius Slayton if you had to, especially with 6 teams on bye. So. Then Des Bryant came out today and said that he's willing to take offers from teams. And I'm like, I'm sure you are. I bet if someone contacted Terrell Owens right now and said, hey, bro, we'd like you to come back and play for us, I bet you he'd show up and want to play. Like, I can't imagine there's a big market for Des Bryant, especially, last year coming off he tore his Achilles or his ACL. I can't remember which one it was.
Achilles.
His Achilles. Didn't even get to play a snap with the Saints. Like, it was, played one practice with them and got hurt. I don't know. I can't imagine any team. Like, you'd have to be pretty desperate to add Des Bryant at this point.
I think the Eagles could. I think their receiving core has been decimated by injuries, Jackson and whatnot. But fantasy-wise, I don't know if he's worth a speculative ad unless you have like a free spot. And even then, there's still other guys that I would rather have than Brian, because even if he lands in the most ideal situation, which Philly even isn't the most ideal, you're still not starting him, right?
There's
bring back Jordan Matthews to Philly if that,
What is that, the 6th time that he's somehow?
Hey, it's like, he just sits back and wait. He's like, hey, I'm just gonna bounce around now, and I know they're gonna call me. So he's like that. He's like the that girl that you call, or that person that you call. And whenever it's been a late night, you're drunk, you're needing something, you just call. Hey, come on.
Hey, Jordan, you up? Yeah.
You know that you shouldn't, but you can't help yourself.
And you wake up and you're like, son of a bitch! I told myself.
Damn, he's here. Oh God.
Do I have to call him a cab now? I hate this part.
Yeah. Anyways, so I don't know. Like I didn't. And then the last one, we thought AJ Green was going to come back, and now it doesn't. He didn't practice today. Like I don't know what's going on there. If I'm AJ Green, I'm like I'm out, bro. Like I'm hurt. Like this leg's still hurt. It's going to be out. I'm going to be done for the rest of the year. You literally have nothing to gain to play this year.
Yeah, I was going to say zero incentive for him as a player to come out and risk re-injury to that knee or just another injury in general. I mean, the Bengals are a dumpster fire since they let go or benched your favorite child, Andy Dalton there. R.I.P.
Yeah, and if I was AJ Green, I would play. He was like, you know what? I only play with Andy. Okay, so I'm not playing with this Ryan Finley.
Yeah,
dude,
who's this
okay?
Ryan Finley guy? Screw him.
So I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But as of right now, it's not looking good for AJ Green. And then our boy Preston Williams, Mr. Preseason, finally has his career game, monster game last week, and then he tears his ACL. Like just sad. You hate to see it. You hate to see it. You know. Now it looks like it's Devontae Parker time to shine. You know, get that paycheck because he's a free agent after this year for Devontae Parker. He's the man now in that offense. You know, Mark Walton is suspended. You know, everything's looking great for Miami and their tank. You know, I don't know what they can't even tank right. You know, how do you lose or how do you win a game when you're trying to tank? The way it was heading last week, they should have just after halftime came out and said, "Oh, Ryan Fitzpatrick will not play the rest of the game. He is all of a sudden sick and will not be returning."
He swallowed too much of that beard during one of the plays when he got all pumped up, and he's back there yakking up hairballs. Not going to be able to finish out. But for your dynasty leagues, a name to add: Gary Jennings. He went. I think the Dolphins signed him, or they brought him in for at least for like a physical or something. So a deep dynasty ad, Gary Jennings, the rookie out of W.
I will say in regards to that Finns receiving core, RIP, my boy Preston Williams, like you said, it's just such a shame. But it does free up targets for Devontae, and we'll get to this in a minute. But speaking of juicy playoff schedules, Philly, New York Jets, New York Giants, and Cincy for Parker in Miami. So that preseason hype is finally coming to fruition. It's crazy.
Speaking of the fantasy playoffs, that was a good time to get into the meat and the potatoes. We're an hour into this damn thing, and here we are. We haven't even talked about it yet. So let's go ahead and jump into that. I think this is as good a time as any to start this conversation. I know we kind of started it, and we kind of had a conversation at the beginning, gave a little appetizer for it. But here we are, so let's go ahead and talk about it again. We're about 3 or 4 weeks away from the fantasy playoffs starting. What a crazy – I mean, I cannot believe we are here and it's week 10. Thursday Night Football is tomorrow night, Chargers, Raiders, and here we are, and it's almost over again, you know? And so, for like I said, like sort of like to build off the conversation that we had earlier, let's kind of do it like this. I want to have this to be like an open conversation here, and let's just talk about some things. Like one – let's say you are a 3-6, maybe a 4-5 team, 5-4 team. You know, looking, you know, you're on that fringe of making the playoffs, depending on how things are looking. How would you attack these next 4 weeks?
I think one of the first things you have to do, touched on it earlier, is just look at your points scored versus, you know, the points that have been scored against you. That's the first place I would look. If you're, you know, a 3-6 kind of team, but you're second in points, that's just been bad luck. You know what I mean? So like depending on what you can do and how active your league is, might look and shake some things up. Maybe try and, you know, pick up an Allen Robinson, who a lot of people are losing faith in because of Trubisky in that game he just delivered with the one catch. You know, maybe you can go out and snag somebody like a Jamison Crowder on the cheap, something like that. But if you're a 3-6 team, and like let's say that your league is relatively balanced, but you're 6th, 7th, 8th in scoring, something I would look to do is, again, something we touched on earlier, is it might be time to trade one of your studs if you have a stud. You know what I mean? Maybe you get rid of a Kamara or a Cook, although that hurts. But if those are the only pieces you have, like those would be my main starting points. How am I doing in points scored versus points against? And what can I do to either shake up my team, or how do I shore up? Maybe it's just the tight end spot that's been killing you all year. You've been trying to stream it and it hasn't been working out. If you can trade and shore up one of those positions, that's kind of where I would start to look.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I was going to touch on the unloading your studs piece again, and just losing all, I would say, like faith in name brands. Like you've seen it with guys like we already mentioned, Todd Gurley, Juju Smith-Schuster. You can't hang on to these guys. I mean, not those guys specifically because they're not necessarily trade targets right now. But if you got guys on your team that you loved drafting them, they've been doing really well for you. But once you look at that points for, points against, and you realize your team is actually shit, and you're 3-6 for a reason, you got to start letting go of some pieces. You got to start, phoning up those teams that are already basically clinched and ready to go, and see if you can get some more depth to make that final push. Because when push comes to shove, if you don't do anything, you're probably just going to end up not making the playoffs. So might as well want to take one more swing for the fences and see what you can do and see who bites out there. So I think trading is just like kind of a blanket statement there, but you got to be open to any deals in order to make that team better and go for that final push.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is definitely something you can do. Try to make a trade like that. I think it's definitely a way you could go. But kind of like what we talked about, I think basically you start with just throwing out the mantra of you got to start your studs. Like I think you just simply look at matchup. You look at what plays or what players have the higher upside. And that's who you're rolling with. You're looking for the all GPP team. You're no longer playing cash. Now you're in a GPP world, and that's kind of the way you look at it. Is you're just looking for ceiling. No one gives a shit about about their floors at this point, because that's all we're looking for is wins. Because especially if you're that 3-6 team, 5-4, you have a little bit more leeway because you can probably lose a week and still make the playoffs. But if you're 3-6, like you have nothing else to lose. So in terms of trying to look ahead, I think that is the smartest way, is to try to target, if you're a 5-4 team and you're right there on the fringe of making the playoffs, one, doing that, and then two, like we talked about, of who are some, if you were a team like that and you had a Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara, who are the players that you would want to try to target for that run?
David Montgomery, I think, is my number one trade target right now. Over the last 2 weeks, we've finally seen Chicago, Matt Nagy, unlock him and his talent. Over 70% of snaps, as RB2 over the last 2 weeks, just behind CMC. So he's somebody, I think, if you want to unload a CMC, a Dalvin Cook, a Barkley, look for the team that has him. You can get him and a piece, another. You could even get two, like him and an RB1, him and a wide receiver 1 for a stud running back like that. He's a guy that I'm looking to trade for. Another guy would be, we mentioned him earlier, like a DJ Chark right now. That playoff schedule is extremely favorable. They got Nick Foles back under center. As much as I love me some Minshew mania, I think Foles is the better quarterback. He can sling it downfield. The targets will still be there for him. And he's already a top 10 receiver right now, and he's been playing with a rookie 6th round pick. God, it feels bad to just talk shit on Minshew right now. I feel like I'm betraying him. But I think guys like that, like if you could package a Montgomery and a Chark and then maybe another asset by getting rid of your stud RB1 or wide receiver 1, I think you got to go for those types of guys.
Yeah, you definitely want to make sure you're getting back production in that one. A lot of my trade targets, like typically the way I try and go is like guys that I know I can get on the cheap, that I'm not going to have to overpay for, guys that have been disappointing. Just based off that, some of my trade targets, like Odell Beckham, he's been, not producing to the level that we've been expecting, but their run in the playoffs, I mean, they have the Bengals, the Cards, and the Ravens. It's like, as bad as it's been, like it's not going to stay this bad. Like I can't buy into that. So someone like that, a Golden Tate, I mean, especially now with this, with the information coming out about Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram is now banged up. He's going to get funneled targets. And somebody like a Sony Michel, again, another cheaper option. Their playoff schedule is quite friendly as well. They have the Chiefs, the Bengals, and the Bills in week 16. But you have to get somebody that's giving you production along with like hoping on a cheaper guy. So like a Chris Godwin is somebody I would target. We already touched on him, like an Allen Robinson. You have to get production back from one of those guys. Like I would not just be trading it for guys that I'm going to hope that are going to turn it around.
So you'd be like, living on a prayer? Whoa, we're living on a prayer. Take my hand.
Oh, man. Do you guys think Montgomery, I mean, like, obviously people have been calling for this breakout since week 1. I mean, since he was drafted, hell. And do you think, like, to your point, Cody, like, is that in your eyes throwing out a Hail Mary saying, like, hey, if he can keep this up, he can be a top 10 running back? And for me, I think like, obviously it's only been 2 weeks, but I think they found the answer there. What do you think?
Well, first, I think we just want to say shout out to the fantasy counselor for leading us all in that direction. You know, if it wasn't for him, none of us would have known who it was. Oh, man, I'm petty.
You couldn't even get through that. You couldn't get through that entire sentence without laughing.
I know, we're all conscious. Is that what they say? Anyway.
Yeah, we're already an hour into this. We don't have time. This could be a whole other episode.
Yeah. So absolutely, David Montgomery is a buy, but it's tough because he has started to spread his wings and fly, if you will, and so it's going to take a little bit more than what it would otherwise. Like, I feel like if I'm looking to buy, like I love the Allen Robinson call. If you need a wide receiver, I think Allen Robinson's a fantastic. He's been, despite terrible despite terrible quarterback play, he has been a solid option this year. You know, he's seeing the targets, and I think that's kind of what you're looking for. So, you know, yes, he is paired with a terrible quarterback, and I think you can still get him for probably a decent price. And I think that's the way you could go. I love the Golden Tate call. Over the last 4 weeks, Golden Tate is 5th in targets among all wide receivers with 35. I think, you know, he is somebody that you could play or that you could try to scoop up. I think Tyler Boyd, especially knowing, you know, it's tough now with him though, because, you know, now we have Ryan Finley. I don't know how that's going to go. I would err on the side of caution to think that it's probably going to be a shit show, but, you know, because the Andy Dalton is the GOAT. But I think a Cortland Sutton, who has really shown to be like kind of like an alpha there, and continued to have another solid week this past week with Brandon Allen at quarterback. I mean, Brandon Allen actually looked like an upgrade over Joe Flacco, which doesn't take a whole lot, but I still think that I think that he is somebody that you could try to target. If you're looking at wide receiver, you know, like a Jamison Crowder would be another option. I think would come pretty cheap. You know, Robbie Anderson, I think I would love to target, but it's just tough because, you know, we thought last week was a good week for old Sam Darnold, but that did not happen, you know, against the Dolphins. Like, you know, can't do it against them. I don't know when they're going to do it. But, yeah, I mean, I think there's different ways you can go about this, and without necessarily having to acquire, you know, grade one, you know, stud type players. Like, you can go out here and try to add, you know, depth and players that are going to help you where other players may not even be starting them.
Yeah, and Kev, just on your Cortland Sutton call, fantasy playoffs, they get the Texans, the Chiefs, and the Lions. So that's a nice stretch run there and you got to figure there's probably people in your league that have like most of us had no idea who Brandon Allen was, and they just might be looking to get out from Cortland Sutton because they don't believe in the quarterback change. So even though he has been producing at a wide receiver 1 level, you're probably not going to have to pay wide receiver 1 prices for him, just given his situation and circumstance.
Yeah, I think another guy in that depth conversation would be Sony Michel. Somebody else with a favorable playoff schedule and also on a bye this week. So in a week where a lot of people are on buys, you might find an owner getting a little, you know, wondering who they're going to start this week. Seeing Michel's on a buy, that discounts his value a little bit. If you're the guy trying to trade for him, and his touchdown upside, kind of like a Gurley, is huge with that favorable schedule playing KC, Cincy, and Buffalo. A little tougher at the end there. But again, another piece of depth that you can add shipping off one of your stud players.
on the other side of that, let's say you are a 7-2 team, 8-1. You're just rolling. Everything's going great. However, let's say your quarterback has a terrible playoff schedule. Would you look to sell that player, even though that they may have been solid for you for all the entire season? Now, with knowing that you're clinched for the playoffs, would you sell that guy for a quarterback that has a better schedule?
I would. Again, I'm going to bring him up. Nick Foles. If he's available on the wire, and I mean, this is an extreme example, but the quarterback with the worst playoff schedule is Patrick Mahomes. So if you're a 7-2, 8-1 team, or even 6-3, you have Pat Mahomes. You've been winning without him because he's been hurt. You get an owner that just is going to buy on that name brand, and obviously he's going to come back. I think he's coming back this week. He was a full go in practice today. But that's somebody, if you can get something pretty good in return for him, and I mean, you'd stream your way to the playoffs. So again, this might only be if you're a 7-2, 8-1 tech team and pretty much already clinched, because I don't know what's going to be on the wire in the next few weeks to get you good QB production, probably something. But if you can pick up a Foles and then trade Mahomes for depth, I don't see why you wouldn't do that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, all depends on what you're getting in return. If you know that you have it locked up, and Kev, you said there's a team in your league 7-2, but they're shit. Like if you're a legit 7-2 team and you can get by with trading away someone like that, then yeah, I would definitely do that. Now, to kind of keep going on this, how do you guys feel about keeping players in onesie positions? Like we've touched on a little bit, but let's say you have someone who doesn't have the worst schedule, but it isn't the best. Like, would you pick up another quarterback? Would you pick up like a second defense, just looking forward to like a playoff schedule? Now, obviously, you're not going to do this if you're a 3-6 team, 5-4 team, and you're trying to fight your way in. But if you're set up and you feel pretty confident that you are going to the playoffs, would you hold two players at a onesie position just for a stretch run?
I would, for sure, especially when it comes to defense. I think there are a couple that I would target for sure, like a Philly and a Baltimore. We already briefly mentioned them, but I don't think it's a problem if you're 8-1 or 7-2 to roster a couple defenses. Patriots are on a bye this week. People aren't dropping them, so Baltimore could be available on your wire. Philly's probably available on your wire. I don't see why those aren't worth pickups right now, especially Baltimore this week. But yeah, to answer your question briefly, yes, I think it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, so if you're an 8-1, 7-2 type team, I mean, you have a distinct advantage over a lot of people where you're not necessarily worried about not making the playoffs, because it's pretty high. I mean, it'd be almost unlikely for you not to make the playoffs at this point. So you can do things a little bit differently. If you're in a league where you have 6-7 bench spots, for sure, I think that is an underrated thing that people should be doing, especially over these next week or two, is identifying the best matchup. Say you're in a league where you get a first round bye, so you start looking at that week 15. Now, you don't want to do it now or a little bit too far, because a lot of things can change between now and then. But I think in the next week or two, that's what you should be looking at. Thinking ahead, where most people are just focused on that 1 week and that's all they care about. They're not looking a couple weeks on. I do that. I do this with bye weeks too. If I know, like for example, my quarterback's gonna be on bye next week, and I will start looking now to add that player. So I don't have to worry about it. And two, I just think it's smart. And if you can make it work, not everybody has that luxury of being able to do that. And I wouldn't want to drop somebody if I didn't have to, like, that handcuff that we've talked about. My bench is loaded. I have all handcuffs, and then I have McLaurin and Larry Fitzgerald on my bench. Like that's it. It's all running backs and then them two. But I am looking at that because I'm pretty solidified to be able to make the playoffs. And I that's what I'm starting to look at now, are these types of moves, because you don't want to get left with, you get to week 15 or you get to week 14, the playoffs have started, and here you are, and your players are on terrible matchups and it's not looking good for you, all because of that. Like, where I think just being smart and having some foresight with it. And if you have to, and if you are an 8-1 team and you're still 8-1 and you have Patrick Mahomes, I would fucking trade Patrick Mahomes. Like there's no reason for you just to keep him for this point. Yes, Patrick Mahomes can dominate the rest of this season and score 30 points a week. Like, I don't care what defense they're facing. There's not a defense in this league that can shut down this offense. It's just there isn't one. And so, yeah, I mean, this week could actually be the first week we've seen that their entire offense since the first quarter of week 1 would be the last time that we've seen their entire offense all together. Because somebody's always been out, whether it was Tyreek or Chris Conley or Mahomes or Damian Williams, like somebody has always been out. And so anyways, yeah, but if you're a team like that, and yeah, sure, make that move. And, you know, and I think a lot of people would give up a lot for Patrick Mahomes, especially because he still has the name. It doesn't matter. And if a team is desperate for a quarterback, but they have, you know, maybe they're loaded at running back and you're kind of short at running back. Maybe you have a Saquon, but then, you know, your RB2 is, you know, a Mark Ingram. Not that Mark Ingram's terrible, because Mark Ingram's are pretty solid, but something like that. Or I think even like attacking like Latavius Murray. Like, I think we haven't talked about that, but Latavius Murray's balled these last 2 weeks. And earlier in the year, up until Alvin Kamara got hurt, like it was Alvin Kamara's backfield. I think that's done now. I don't think we're going to see that the rest of the way. I think we are going to see now that Latavius Murray has earned the Mark Ingram role, and I don't think that's going to change. And I think so. Not that means that Alvin Kamara is dead by any means, because we saw Alvin Kamara can be the most efficient running back in the league. But I think that now Latavius Murray has a role, and I think you can start to look at him like a weekly RB2, and somebody you can have for team, especially with Alvin Kamara coming back, because everyone's going to be, oh, well, now he's dead again, and you can't use him. Like, I think Latavius Murray is an absolute buy with Alvin Kamara coming back, especially with Drew Brees back in the lineup. This offense is now back to full strength, and I do think that the Latavius Murray is 100% is going to have a role moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good call on the Latavius Murray thing, because if you look back at the past couple of years, that like they weren't using Kamara in that, you know, 80% touch kind of role. That's why Mark Ingram was there. That's why he had that role. He had I think in 2017, I think Ingram averaged, it was something like 18 touches a game or something crazy like that. And then obviously last year, I think it dropped down to like 12 or 13. But still, if you can get Latavius Murray at a much reduced price and he's getting 13 to 15 touches per game, Kev, like you said, there's no reason for them to ride Kamara into the ground. And this is probably part of the reason why they were reluctant to do that the first 2 years, is because they were, you know, the health concerns surrounding him. There's no reason for him to do it. And like you guys were saying, people are going to look at that and be like, oh, well, he wasn't doing anything at the beginning of the year. You might get people that drop him this week. So you could easily go out and get him at a reduced cost. That's a really good call, Kev.
Yeah, I would say do it ASAP because I think this week is going to be, once we look at the snap share numbers and whatnot, we're going to see Latavius on the field a ton. So you're right, he might have even been dropped because people are just like, oh, he was a handcuff for me, and Kamara got hurt, and I don't have room because there are bye weeks this week. So people are freaking out and scooping up what they need and dropping guys that they don't think are going to be of any value for them. So I think he's a prime buy or just grab off the wire candidate right now, because yeah, like with Mark Ingram and Kamara, we're both producing like RB1s in that backfield when this offense is at full strength. We know how good their O-line is with Brees back. Like, that team's a wagon. And I think Murray's going to go off.
Traquan Smith would be like another sneaky ad. He's finally back at practice, and I think they could use a wide receiver too outside of Ginn. So he might be a sneaky like waiver pickup with that entire offense returning to full strength.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's somebody you could add. I think Zay Jones continues to get more and more involved in that offense with the Raiders. I think that he's somebody that you could look to add. You know, maybe like a Cole Beasley, who just kind of quietly goes about his business, not somebody that's super flashy. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's different ways you can go. Speaking of Buffalo, what is your guys' thoughts on Devin Singletary? Is he somebody that you guys would be actively going out and trying to acquire? I mean, I know he's going to be tougher now because he's kind of taken over that backfield, which but do you think this is for real and this is something that's sustainable for him? Because right now, I mean, Frank Gore has been almost pretty much irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of my favorite running backs coming into this year. We finally saw what seems like the torch being passed. Obviously, Gore. I mean, he shouldn't be part of their future plans, but he hasn't died yet. So who the hell knows? But I think Singletary's legit. A lot of people were down on him because he was a smaller running back and he ran like a 4.6 40 or something at the combine. Kev, you already said it, that it's going to be tough, especially after the week he put up last week. On the flip side of all of the buys that we've been talking about, somebody that I had written down as someone to trade away, just based on their playoff schedule, Marlon Mack. This week he has a game against Miami, and then in the fantasy playoffs, he's going to face the Bucs, the Saints, and the Panthers. So that could be somebody who you're looking to sell high on, and maybe you can get a Singletary plus in return for Marlon Mack.
Yeah, I love Singletary. I think that, I mean, we all know Frank Gore is just like the undead at this point, man. He's just still getting, I mean, when they were injured, it was just like he was back in his, 2009, 2010 form. But stat from Football Outsiders, of running backs that have less than 72 rushes, of which Singletary qualifies, he's number 1 in defensive adjusted yards, basically like a WAR type metric, wins above replacement. So he is confirmed good. And I think that he has really solidified himself as the number 1 back here. And for somebody like a Marlon Mack that has more of a name brand, that you could probably sell really high after this matchup against Miami, I think that's I don't know if I'd necessarily do that trade straight up. I think you could definitely get more. But I mean, come playoffs now, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at guys that are going to pop. To your point, Kev, like it's crazy how much things change in those last 3 weeks. We saw what happened with Derrick Henry last year. I mean, he was shit for the entire season and then just really went off and won people leagues those last 3 weeks. So it's about finding guys right now that have the potential to pop. And I think Singletary is someone that we've been saying all year is going to take over that backfield. We're seeing it happen with Montgomery right now. I think it's only a matter of time before it's going to be too late to buy him.
Yeah, I mean, I love Singletary, and I think that, I mean, if you look at him, I mean, he has been as efficient as they come. He's number 1 in yards per touch. He's number 1 in breakaway run rate. He's number 3 in juke rate. You know, I mean, just everything is pointing to him being the man there. It also helps with having Josh Allen that being paired next to a running quarterback always helps. Always helps the running game. Doing those RPOs and everything else, I think it is a way is great for any running back production. And so he's also being utilized as a pass catcher. He's, I think, 6th or 7th in targets over the last 2 weeks since coming back. So 10 targets, so averaging 5 targets a week. You know, math is pretty easy there on that one. So yeah, like I love Singletary. I think he's somebody that you can target. I think that, you know, like we've already talked about David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs. Yes, these guys are. And so for a lot of these players like this who are playing well, but I think if you offer somebody a name like I said, like a Saquon or a Christian McCaffrey, like again, if you're that team that's 4-5, 3-6, like you're struggling, and you have a Saquon, you have a Christian McCaffrey, but you're really struggling with all the rest of your depth, I think you can make that move. Yeah, it's tough, but like, who gives a shit? We're 4 weeks away from the playoffs, and at this point, it doesn't matter. And so, move those guys. Like, they're not helping you now. You wouldn't be in a position you were if your team was so great, right? And so, yes, I would trade a Christian McCaffrey. I would trade a Saquon Barkley for the right price. I'm not just giving them up for nothing. I'm not just just give me all your scrubs and I'm going to give you this guy. No. But if a player has, let's say they're loaded at running back and they drafted really well and they have a Singletary and they have a Josh Jacobs and David Montgomery and, say, hey, I'll give you Christian McCaffrey for, David Montgomery and Devin Singletary plus, it's going to take more than just, it's going to take a haul, but that's what you're going to need. And then all of a sudden, you're kind of stocked, and then you can kind of roll into the playoffs feeling much better than what you would have, otherwise. So again, like, I think that's kind of what we're looking to do. And I think one other aspect too of things, and not just the playoffs, I think a lot of things, there's one aspect I think of fantasy football that most people go overlook, and that's keeper leagues. Most people, we don't spend a lot of time ever talking about keeper leagues. They're just kind of like the redheaded stepchild of fantasy football, but that's pretty much all I play in. I'm kind of a tweener. Like I'm not I don't think I'll ever be a full on dynasty head like a lot of people are, but I do enjoy being able to feel like I'm building something of a team. And if I'm a team in a keeper league, and let's say you had a really bad year, you're 2-7, you're not making the playoffs, it's already over for you. This is a time to get extremely aggressive and start trying to acquire players. You take your assets, the few assets that you probably have. For example, if you have a Keenan Allen or somebody like that, and you see somebody who's really struggling at wide receiver, and they have a Devin Singletary, but they're just loaded at running back, especially in a keeper league, and then you try to trade an asset like that, or you have a Patrick Mahomes or something like that. Because it's very realistic that you could have those players, especially as bad as they've been, and you're just terrible this year. And I think you take those players and you try to get as much assets as you can back for the next season to solidify yourself for next year, because it's over for you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and maybe that's something that we should look at next week, is maybe going in depth with some more keeper stuff, because that's, until you just said that, I didn't realize we literally never talked about keeper leagues. I don't think, well, especially since I've joined anyway. But yeah, man, that's a really good point. But we need to get you in a full blown dynasty, my man.
I've tried them. I've tried dynasty leagues, and it's fun, but like it's like people so fucking like love trades and love trading to, like, it's like every fucking hey man, you want to trade, man, hey man. And it's like
just addicted to it.
I know, and it's like it's like in I don't know. I'm just trying to think of a player, fucking Julio Jones or something. Hey, I'll give you Paris Campbell for Julio Jones, or hey,
six first round picks.
Yeah, like, no, dude, fuck you. Like I'm trying to win, but I always feel like in dynasty leagues, people aren't trying to win. And I know if anybody plays dynasty, they're gonna get so pissed, because dynasty leagues are like a fucking brethren of people, and they will defend dynasty to the fucking core, and they will come at me with fucking pitchforks. But it's fucking true, and like, it seems fun. Like on the surface, it seems fun, because like during, like, I love like rookie season, like rookie draft season. Because the couple leagues I played in, like, I love that part of it. Doing the rookie draft was so much fun. Like, oh yeah, I'm getting my fix of fantasy football in April and May. Like, this is great, right? Like, I enjoy that part of it. But then like it's the rest of it's just like, okay, and like people are offering you like, I'll give you 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4 for Amari Cooper. And I'm like, eat a dick. Like, like, no, like, why would I do that? Like, I don't care about trades and draft picks 17 years from now. I'm trying to win this season. And I always just feel like people are always kicking the can to next season and never really, you know what I mean? Like, no one's ever focused to win. And maybe people are. And I know there's different aspects of dynasty, and there's people that are hardcore, like they're trying to win every year. And you probably have people that are building for the future and look at it as a long game. But I don't know. Like, sell me on dynasty. Be a salesman. You're a dynasty. You're a dynasty head. Sell me on dynasty. This is your opportunity as a dynasty guy. I'm a pure redraft DFS. Like, I spend most of my time on DFS, but I also play redraft. Sell me on dynasty.
Well, you picked the wrong guy for this job, because I'm a mailman, because I'm awful at sales. So there's a reason why I'm no longer a personal trainer, is because I'm terrible at sales. But like to me, if that's been your experience with like the trades and everything, you've just been in an awful league. Like, you'll definitely have your guys that are trying to that they don't want to give up anything and they want your stud. Like your, Paris Campbell for Julio Jones. Like, you'll definitely have those people. But to me, that just sounds like you've been in the wrong league with the wrong people. Like, dude, if you love rookie season and you like keepers and like building something, like it literally doesn't get better than Dynasty. Like, the reason why I love Dynasty is because it's 365. Like, like you'll have some of your people that'll like kind of like fade off in the off season, but for the most part, man, like I'm looking forward to the NFL being over so I can start watching the Senior Bowl and then the Combine and then the NFL draft. And then it's like, dude, it's nonstop. Like, it never ends. Like, if you have like a dominant redraft team, sucks next year, because you're not gonna have those dominant players anymore. But like, yeah, I definitely get your point about like people on the surface seems like they're not trying to win because everybody wants like that sexy team. So like the second that like things like kind of start to go a little bit haywire, it's, well, let me start picking up all these picks. So oh dude, you hear about this 2023 class? It's going to be so sick. Like bro, give me your 2023 first, second, third, and fourth. And you're definitely going to have those people. And that is a legit point. But the fact that you threw out the trade examples that you did tells me that you've gotten way too many awful trades, which tells me that you've just been in the wrong kind of league.
So a couple of years ago, we actually had it may still be going on. I'm not even sure. A TFA Dynasty League. Justin McCaslin and Travis May set it up as back. And I think it was like TFA Endgame or something like that. And they had it was all themed and everything else. It was kind of cool, right? We went through, we did the rookie we did the Dynasty startup draft. I went through, did that. And, so, I went and did, we did that. And then we went through the season. And then during the season, I think it was a 2 quarterback, super flex league, tight end premium. And if I can remember correctly, I think my quarterback went down. And so I was like, dude, I don't give a shit about these picks. So I traded next year, all my picks for a quarterback, and everyone just lost it. What are you doing? You just traded all your picks for next year for a quarterback. I'm like, I don't give a shit, man. I'm trying to win. I don't care about these stupid picks. Then, though, I will say after the season, I was like,
you gave a shit a lot about those picks.
So then I started making other trades to get some picks because I have to have some picks because I want to make some picks. But
you're damn right.
But I feel like I did pretty well for myself though, because I think it wasn't last year, it was the year before's class. But I know I drafted Sam Darnold. Who else did I fucking draft? I'm trying to remember. I did well. I can't remember who it was, but it was a pretty solid draft. But regardless, I like the aspects of it, and I like the 365 part of it and all that stuff. But for me, I just feel like that there's way too much people want to masturbate over draft picks that are coming, and we and every year it is the same. It's you better wait till next year's running back class. That thing is gonna be sexy, and then it comes and it's like, guys, okay, this year's not really looking as good as what it was supposed to, but you wait till next year. It's gonna be really good. So acquire all those next year picks. All right, do whatever you can to get those picks. You trade those studs. You don't care. Get those picks, boys.
Oh, no.
Hey, we got Montgomery and Singletary going off right now. We're just talking about them. Those are some picks. I'm stoked. And I do have a confession to make, speaking of Dynasty Leagues, and you literally brought up his name, and you've been trashing this, so I can't wait for your guys' reaction. But I traded Julio Jones in a Dynasty League for Kyler Murray and 3 first-round picks. And I just want your initial thoughts on that. I thought it was a good move. I'm 1-8 right now. So, Code, you're the Dynasty master. I mean, those types of trades, it's tough, but I think I had to do it.
I mean, if your team is legitimately that bad, this kind of goes into the redraft thing. Is it and that's the thing with redraft. If you're 1-8, you're checking out. You're not giving a shit. You know what I mean? But in Dynasty, there's so much more you can do about all right, well, my team fucking sucks balls this year, but maybe there's something I can do to turn us around next year. But as far as that trade goes, Julio Jones as an older receiver, his value is only going to keep decreasing. I probably wouldn't have been crazy about getting Kyle, unless it's a super flex league. The Kyler Murray, the Kyler Murray wouldn't have moved the needle for me all that much, but getting 3 first, and that's the thing. If you're
them draft picks.
Bro, this fucking tight end class,
there he is.
This tight end class in 2022 is gonna be the tits. No, but
dude, that's over Jonathan Taylor and Etienne at Clemson. These boys look great, man. I'm pumped.
Albert O next year from Mizzou. I mean,
yeah. Albert O. But that's the thing. With there are the certain types in each dynasty league. You have the guys that are just hey man, you got any more of those picks? Where you get those draft picks at? You have those guys. But then that's the thing with dynasties, especially if you're with the same league mates over and over, you'll get to know all right, Kev fucking hates draft picks. So as soon as the new league rolls over and he gets his 2021, hey Kev, got a tight end for you. Just give me those picks 2 years out, and like you're gonna get the picks, and then you have the guys that always want the draft picks, where you can take two of those, Murph. Like you can take two of those draft picks and be like, you know what, man, like I don't think Chris Godwin's gonna really reproduce from what he did last year. I'll give you a first and a second for him. Well, I mean that first does look early, so maybe I can get ETN instead of Godwin. Like you're gonna have those people like that. To me, that's the thing about Dynasty is like there's a lot more strategy that goes into it. Like, and especially once you start playing with the same league mates, like you can pick up on tendencies. Like there are people in my leagues I know, like, all right, this dude only wants big names. This dude only wants picks. So like it makes it's like especially in redraft leagues, like trading and that sort of thing can be a little more difficult. But in Dynasty, like Kev's right, like you definitely have the people that are like way too like, hey man, just sent you a trade 30 seconds ago. I saw you didn't reply. Just want to make sure you got it. Like you will have the people that are that go like way overboard with it. But in general, man, like it's just like the strategy behind it. And like to me, it's rookie. It's the rookie season. It's watching guys, and it's the closest that we're ever going to get to being GMs. So like Kev was talking about the keeper thing and like feeling like you're building something. Like to me, that's where Dynasty comes in.
Yeah, and I guess to put a bow on it, we've been talking about this now for like 15 minutes, but like I guess like as far as Dynasty goes too, like I'm very much into like everyone that people have asked me to play. It's like, hey, it's listen, it's a $10 pot or it's a $10 buy. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to play in your $10 fucking league. Like I didn't have some skin in the game. Place. And I feel like if I want to put in all that work, because I feel like most people are like, hey, I'm in like 30 leagues. And I'm like, okay, but how much do you pay towards them? And they're like $20 a piece or something. And I'm like, and I guess if it adds up, like it makes sense. But like, I don't know. I feel like if I'm going to put in all that time, like bring me into a league that's $100 buy-in, a $200 buy-in. If I'm putting in all that time and effort and everything else that it takes to do this, like I need to feel like I'm winning something here, but like it always seems like the people. And I guess then people are like, I play for fun. I'd rather just, and I'm like, I've never been that way. I've never said, I'm looking to win. Like, and I want to win money. Right. And this is the gambler in me. That's the DFS guy in me. That's always looking to smash the millie, but like, I just can't like get it as excited about it because I'm not as invested whenever I'm only paying $10, because if I only pay $10 to get in the league and I suck, I don't care. I'm done. Okay, whatever. Like I'll just stop paying attention because I don't have nearly as invested, and I guess this is my mindset with it. But I feel like that also is what happens with a lot of dynasty leagues, and that like people are just at 100 dynasty leagues, but they're paying $5 a dynasty league. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I can get that. I think like for me, I have, thank God the wife's in bed. I do have two of my like home leagues are $200 buy-ins. One of them is 100 and another one is like 80 or 75 or something. So like for me, like if I'm joining another league, I'm like, well, you have any more of those $25 buy-ins? Like, but like what I do with those is like I look to join leagues of like different formats that I'm not in. So like one of the ones, actually, Zach Marmer started. Like, dude, it's Devi college players, and we drafted, I think it was like the final tally was like 140 like college players. Like, dude, it's just asinine. Like I wouldn't join another just like standard one quarterback, start 7 guys like dynasty league. So like for the ones that I'm joining that are like Superflex, Devi, or whatever. Like that's where those $25 to $35 leagues coming for me.
Yeah, and that's fine if you're one of those people that enjoys playing in those types of leagues and like you do it more for the fun of it and like that matters more to you. But that's just not my thing. And because I know some and like some of those leagues, like it feels like people that just like try to create them just be like, let me tell you how fucking complicated this league is and how crazy it is. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be like this like Travis May, love the dude to death. Like he was with TFA for years, really good dude, great dynasty mind, great college guy. But like he would be like, man, so let me tell you about this new league I'm in. I'm like, okay. He's like, it's a 32 team. We draft 53 players. We draft a 50-man college. And I'm like, dude, like I'm not like I don't got that kind of time on my hands to sit around and try to come up with that. Like maybe it sounds like fun, and like I know it is what it is for everybody. It's different for everybody. I totally get it, but at the same time, I'm like, is it really got to be that serious? Is it really got to be that in depth? And it's almost like like putting your dick out on the table. I'm like, let me show you how big mine is. Let me show you how great this league is that I'm in. I don't know.
No, that makes sense. I can get into that. Like that's like with redraft, I feel like sure you can make like some different things, but like there's not too many like creative like different redraft leagues out there. Like whereas with Dynasty,
no, but see, redraft is catered though to more of your average like
right.
Your player your work leagues, your home leagues, stuff like that, where people just love to draft every year. And then because like trying to explain a Dynasty league to people that are more casual is like impossible, and they'll never be like, I don't have time for that. I have a life. I don't have time to sit here and worry about all this stuff. But regardless, where I feel like keeper leagues are like a happy medium, right? Where like you're not having a rookie draft and everything else. You still get to have your normal redraft, draft that you do in August. But you can pick like in our like in this league, it's you keep 4 for free, and then the 5th and the 6th are $25 a piece. So you keep up to 6. And so you can kind of build a squad and like stuff like that. So I don't know. I just think it's to each their own, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Just real quick before we sign off, I gotta give a shout out. I see my guy J Mike is in the comments. We gotta get him on here, man. They do the open bar, and I have the pleasure of being in a dynasty league, and I think it was J Mike's first dynasty league. It was just like a 14-team super flex league that John Bosch put together. You want to talk about somebody who comes up with crazy shit all the time? That's someone to hit up on Twitter if you're into a league like that. But yeah, we'll have to get J Mike on here at some point, and maybe he can persuade you a little more than I did, and we can get into the weeds with yep, there it is, Kamikaze. Maybe we can get into the weeds a little bit more with redraft and keeper and dynasty, and maybe that can be something we do in the off season.
That is 100% like starting in like January time frame, like after the fantasy season's over, we need to start bringing on dynasty guys because we can start talking about the rookies and everything else. But we also like every segment we're just gonna be like, I want you to tell me why dynasty is so great, and let's just battle this thing out every week, and I will battle it out with every dynasty nerd out there and dynasty head out there. And we'll see if anybody can convince me that dynasty is better than DFS or redraft, because I don't know. There's because I have a lot of ammo. I have a lot of ammo to go. I've been doing. I've been around a while, and I've said this once, and I'll say it again. It's a somewhat unpopular take about DFS, but I think DFS are the smartest players that are in this industry, in my opinion. In terms of the biggest thing that people don't especially redraft players don't do that should is listen to a DFS podcast every single week. I don't care if you never play DFS, you never want to play DFS. I totally get it, but I would listen to DFS podcast over a redraft podcast every single day of the week, because they dig deeper than you. They dig deeper than every. I don't care. I've listened to all redraft podcasts. There is not a redraft podcast that I know of that digs deeper than any DFS podcast does. DFS podcasts are checking out the third string tight end. We were talking about Jacob fucking Hollister last week on the DFS DJ Nation, who scored 2 touchdowns, by the way, who not a single fucking person in the industry on redraft was talking about playing Jacob Hollister last week. Okay. That's the difference, in my opinion, from DFS to redraft is just the level. Now, obviously, that doesn't matter in the offseason, but I'm just talking about in season. If you are not having a DFS podcast in your repertoire, you are doing it wrong.
No, dude, I completely agree. even though we do this pod, like all the other pods I listen to, like in season, like out of season, like it's a lot of like draft and dynasty stuff, but in season, just with between writing and the site and the podcast, like I don't have time to listen to the amount of podcasts that I do in the off season. So in season, it's all DFS. That's literally all it is. Like I don't play too much, like especially like GPPs. Like I obviously do the cash article for the site, and I will play more cash than anything else, just because like that's just how my mind is wired. But like all the information that I consume, like there'll be a couple articles I read here and there, but as far as podcast goes, it's all DFS. Because you're right, like they're digging into every single possible thing you can think of. Like, hey man, 1 o'clock outdoor games with 65 degrees and 5 degree 5-mile-an-hour winds. Josh Allen is 18-0 in those conditions. Like you're not turning on us, you're not turning on the ballers and hearing anything like that. But like DFS, man, like they're breaking down everything because they're trying to find any single edge they can get in order to make money.
Yeah. So with that, I mean, I think we went way over with what we wanted. 45 minutes. Got to make some cuts here, boys. Some stuff's going to get cut from this one to get this down to a reasonable place. But no, I had a lot of fun. I think this was a good show. I think this was a really solid show. I think hopefully everyone gets something out of it, even though we rambled for a little bit. But I do think there was some solid takes. I think, again, going back to sort of what we talked about, just kind of the quick summary. If, depending on where you're at, if you're 7-2, you have a different approach where I think you should be looking at, just strictly, maybe some players you can add, maybe make a trade for that handcuff that you would need, like a Alexander Madison or whomever. I think
Murray.
That's what you should be making. If you're 3-6, you get super aggressive. You can trade your studs now. Go through and do all that. And I think again, being an ultra contrarian, on who you're playing that week, who gives a shit about, start your studs, like that doesn't matter anymore because one more loss and you're done anyway. So go ahead and get aggressive, play high upside guys, play your I would play a deep threat over playing somebody who's more of a possession receiver at this point. You're looking for that 70-yard touchdown break. That's what you're looking for, Robbie Anderson types. But anyways, I mean, that's kind of what we're looking for. I know that's kind of the summary, but we kind of talked about it all. But I think that this is at least a good place to start, a good foundation. I know we'll probably talk about it more as we get closer and closer to that point. But again, I appreciate everybody for checking it out. For me, you can find me on Twitter at FantasyWrath13. You can find Ryan at the Murph34. You can find Cody at CKutzerFF. Again, hit that like on the YouTube channel. We really, really appreciate it. Give us a subscribe. Every like on our videos helps us with the algorithm, really helps get it put out there. And we really appreciate it because we're really trying to grow that. We have a lot of fun things planned for the offseason with creating actually like videos, one-on-one videos coming up, maybe some player profile stuff on a lot of players and stuff like that. I think we want to do a lot of fun stuff with the YouTube channel, really get it going and growing. And, jump into our Slack channel. Hit us up on Twitter. You can email the show at thefantasyauthority1@gmail.com if you have any questions, or if you want to jump into the Slack channel, we'll get you in there. Again, we really appreciate it. Hit that like and subscribe. Go over to your favorite podcast place and subscribe. Leave us a rating and review. We really appreciate it. And again, jump into the Slack channel and we'll get you ready for week 10. We'll guide you to the playoffs. Until next week, we will see you on either Sunday or Monday. You never know with us for the waiver wire show for week 11. Hopefully nothing crazy happens this weekend. But until then, have a great weekend and, hopefully win some money and get that dub.